The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 5:01 p.m. This is a special board meeting being held on April 3rd, 2023. We have a quorum with 6 members present. Mr. Hubenak is absent. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, thank you. All right, we'll now have reports and presentations on the information items. Dr. Nivens.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. We have our athletic director here, Coach Nelson, we're going to talk about our athletic department update. If you recall, back in November, we had propositions D and E on the bond ballot. D was for turf and lighting at Traylor Stadium, and that was not approved by the public. And so this, what we're going to talk about now is our plan on how we can move forward and start to reserve some of the turf and actually get it replaced in the future. So, Coach Nelson.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all for being here this evening and taking time out of your day so that we can update you on what our plans are moving forward. As Dr. Nivens alluded to, this fall, Bond 2022 included a facility request to help us accommodate growing facility needs. We asked our public to consider a second stadium to help us with our large-scale events. That measure was not approved, and thus we are going to have to adjust some current events schedules in order to accommodate those with the facilities that we do have. Traylor Stadium is currently scheduled as our varsity stadium in Lamar Consolidated ISD. It is accommodating 6 high schools at the moment, with plans for a total of 8 high schools within the next 4 years. This year alone, Traylor Stadium will host 44 football games, 6 track meets, 6 graduation ceremonies, band marching events, special events for our special education department, junior ROTC pass and review ceremonies, and annual community events. We will, moving forward, need to restrict the use of the stadium due to some of the needed repairs which need to take place, as well as an attempt to limit wear and tear. The most pressing issue before us is next year's varsity football schedule with 32 potential games. We have had to look both at our capacity for Thursday, Friday, Saturday games, as well as attempts to try to limit how much the turf is used, knowing that the turf is currently past its life expectancy of 10 years. Our plan at the moment is that each Lamar CISD high school will play one of their home games at their campus practice facility. I have included those games on this slide. So you'll see the school, their opponent, the date, the time, and that last number out next to the field is the number of tickets available for the home team. It is mirrored as the number of tickets available for the visiting team for that game, based on capacity at those stadiums. A few things that went into crafting the schedule which included this: we attempted to limit our opponents to only one potential game at one of our campus stadiums. We didn't want one of our district opponents or preseason opponents to have to play 2 games in the course of their 10-game season at our campus stadiums. During these games, which will be held at our campus practice facilities, there will obviously be limited tickets available for each side. Tickets will be sold online the week of the game on a first-come, first-served basis. We do have to follow UIL Constitution and Contest Rule 1250G1, which requires the visiting team to have 50% of the tickets for sale. And they have to follow that when it comes to us traveling to their stadiums as well. There'll be no access for coaches in the press box because our campus press boxes are not large enough to accommodate that. Media and scout access will be limited, and they will be given certain areas of the facility they can access. We will include cheerleaders at those games, but they will stay on their team's benches sideline. So, for example, if you were playing at Terry High School, Terry could choose to be on the side with the bleachers. The team they are playing against would choose to be on the other side. Cheerleaders will stay on the side of the field that corresponds with where their team bench is. Bands and drill teams will not participate. That's a conversation Mr. Estrada and I have had, and due to limited space, we just can't fit them at those games. And during inclement weather situations which could arise during those games, spectators will return to their cars, and the student participants will be held inside our campus field house. Until the stadium undergoes the needed repairs and updates are completed, we will have to limit usage. We will use Trailer Stadium when a campus practice facility is deemed too small for an LCISD event. We will not open it for outside rentals, and we will use it only for the essential events that need to be hosted in such a large venue. I'm going to pause here in the presentation to ask if there's any questions. You do have a copy of the varsity draft football schedule at your desk.
What would be the result if we didn't do this and just continued using Trailer Stadium as we normally have?
There are several weeks that is not an option due to the number of home games we have scheduled that week. We will have to make an accommodation. And one of the other options we looked at was renting other facilities and sending our teams on the road for their home games. The problem, as you'll see in the second part of the presentation, is we're currently trying to find budget funds in order to pay for new turf. So if we exercise that option and rent a facility and send our team on the road, we're moving further away from that goal. By playing at the campus practice facilities, we're not incurring any additional cost at the moment.
Mr. Welch and then Ms. Danziger.
So, for clarity's sake, this is because Prop D failed, D as in dog, not a second stadium. Is that correct?
It's a combination of both. For next year, the most pressing concern is the state of the turf. But in the next 4 years, we'll be up to 8 high schools, and we cannot accommodate 8 high schools worth of varsity football games at Trailer Stadium.
Even if E would have passed the bond, we still would not have a second stadium right now.
That is
So-
correct.
So going into the next football season, that bond having passed would not have alleviated this issue unless D would have also passed. Do I understand that right?
Correct. If we had new turf at Trailer Stadium right now, it would alleviate some of this issue. We still wouldn't have the facilities for every week's worth of 6 high schools games, but we would be moving in that direction. Without a second stadium, this will not just be a one-year situation.
Are the schools that are going to be affected by this from the other districts, are they already been made aware, or is that coming up?
Yes, ma'am. They have been notified that this was the plan for our schedule and what that would mean for their teams. They were notified at the end of February so that they could plan accordingly.
Because I noticed the George Ranch and Travis, those are 2 big schools with 2 big programs. So I see that being not too happy campers. But
I wouldn't say any of our opponents are thrilled at this prospect. It will create a situation where they will have to coach differently in that game because they won't have press box coaches. They will all be on the sidelines. On top of a game environment that does not include band, drill team, or the crowd size they're used to.
What about the idea of streaming it live?
We've looked into, so we currently hold 2 types of camera licenses. We have our huddle cameras, which are in our gymnasiums, and we have the NFHS Pixelot cameras, which are at the natatorium and Trailer Stadium. Part of the issue that we're running into is the height of our campus press boxes and the feasibility to connect to the network in each of them. So in order to stream, we have to have a live connection, and not all of our press boxes have that. It is a problem we are working on. The goal would be to stream them live. It is still a goal. It is not a reality at this time. I'm going to continue, but I'm happy to answer any further questions regarding the football schedule as they come up. As Mr. Welch pointed out, Proposition D is the proposition for turf and lights at Traylor Stadium. At the moment, the most pressing of those two issues is the turf and its current status. Because replacement turf and lights were not approved by our constituents in the latest bond election, we've had to start crafting a plan to address those maintenance needs because the needs have not gone away even though the bond proposition was not approved. Yes, sir. That's prior to a varsity football game. Each week this year, we had to go out and patch the numbers and the seams. We have hit 10 years on that turf, and the numbers and the seams and the hash marks are sewn in, and those are starting to rip up, which means prior to each game, we walked the stadium to make sure we didn't see corners of numbers or holes in the seam, and if we did, they were hand repaired by my assistant athletic director and our facilities coordinator.
Is a grass field more expensive than a turf field long-term?
At this point, it would be more expensive because we'd have to rerun the irrigation systems. And with us playing Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, I don't think grass would be feasible. If it rained on a Thursday and we had a varsity football game, I wouldn't want to be the team trying to play there on Saturday.
Do any other districts in our area have grass?
No, sir. In order to repair the turf, we had to vacuum out the infill. It had to be glued back down, and that infill had to be hand-packed back into the turf. We have signed a maintenance agreement with a turf company for next year. They will come out 4 times. Usually that's 4 times in a year, but we've arranged with them for that to be August, September, October, and November, so that they will come out to do repairs once a month as well. The turf at Traylor Stadium has exceeded its 10-year life expectancy. Based on estimates we've received from multiple turf companies, we have 12 to 18 months remaining with that top layer of turf. Our base layer is still playable, but the top layer of turf is what we're concerned about. Current rough estimates to replace that turf come in at just under $564,000. The athletic department maintenance budget is $150,000 annually, and we use that maintenance budget for things like fence repair, replacing scoreboards, repairing irrigation systems, etc. There are no other budgeted funds available at this time. So we started to look at other possible funding sources. We looked at how we could increase our revenue to offset the cost of new turf. We looked at reducing current budgets so that money could be reallocated where needed. And we looked at the possibility of having to reduce program offerings and staff positions in order to save funds that could be reallocated to the maintenance. In order to do that, we sat 3 different committees. We had a committee that looked purely at the budget. We had a committee that looked at staffing and programs. And then I had my campus athletic coordinators, 2 at the high school and 1 at the junior high, all meet. I'm going to ask those that were involved in that committee process that are here tonight to please stand so they can be recognized for giving of their time to try to solve this problem. You will see they include area superintendents, high school and junior high principals, high school and junior high coaches from each of our color tracks. After both the budget and staffing committee looked at possible funding sources, each of them was asked to rank those. Our first meeting was very informational. Our second meeting, they were given a menu of just over $1 million and asked to go through and rank those options in order to generate approximately $600,000 to replace the turf. Once both the budget and the staffing committee had done that, I asked my campus coordinators, my head coordinator at the high school and the assistant, as well as the junior high coordinator, to sit as a staff and do the same thing, go back through and rate those. And then before it was all said and done, Coach Gabbard, my staff, and I sat down and looked at the feasibility of the things that they were suggesting. During that process, we came to the following conclusions. In order to generate additional revenue, the unanimous first choice of all committees was to include a $1 cost increase for tickets in the 23-24 school year with an estimated revenue generation of $125,000. The committees went through various modes of pay parking at the stadium and settled on the sale of 40 reserved parking spots each year per school at the stadium for varsity contests. And we looked at our current sponsorship opportunities and felt fairly confident in the ability to generate $20,000 of revenue syncing renewals or new sponsorships in places that we already have them, the video board and the scoreboard. Our committees were not in favor of charging a participation fee or halting our practice of allowing LCISD staff into events for free with their staff badges. Last year, we sold 106,000 tickets. I checked this morning. We're at just over 132,000 tickets this year. We talked about those stadium parking options and what we thought would both appeal to those who are coming to those games, but also be something we could manage in the hustle and bustle of a varsity game at the stadium. And we reviewed our scoreboard and video sponsorship contracts. In our conversation about participation fees, it was shared that Humboldt, Pearland, and Katy are the 3 school districts in our region currently charging participation fees for athletics. Those range from $30 to $50. This year, we have 6,682 athletes. If we assume we operate at a 60% payment rate due to our 49% free and reduced lunch rate and a $30 fee, it would generate a possible $120,000. Staff game passes, it was felt fairly unanimously by those in the room that with our current staff of $5,000 or 5,000 staff members, this was a benefit we could offer to them at no additional cost to us. While we could possibly generate $30,000 by charging those staff members, right now that's something we can offer to them as an incentive and a reward for working in Lamar CISD. We talked about reducing current program budgets. Currently, we fund our coaches, our 400 coaches in the district get about $140 worth of apparel each year. That's a pullover, a polo, and a pair of shoes in their school colors to wear for practice and games. The committees came together and said they felt like that could be decreased by 50% to generate some revenue there, as well as reducing coaches' professional development allotment. So depending on how many sports you coach and whether you're a head coach or an assistant coach, you're given an allotment of professional development money for joining organizations and attending coaching clinics. The coaches felt they could cut that by 50% and still get what they needed, and those 2 items didn't impact our students at all. The decision was made to recommend not holding sub-varsity tournaments in LCISD for 1 year, so 9th grade, sophomore JV tournaments in LCISD. It is cheaper to go to that tournament than to host it here and pay all the associated worker fees and mostly the official fees. We discussed cutting the meal allotment for 2 away games for all sports and reducing the number of sub-varsity contests that are not district by 1. The committees did not feel cutting the current maintenance, capital expense, or sports equipment budgets was in the best interest of our programs, and they did not want to stop providing meals when our teams traveled to a tournament for the day. They also felt like suspending LCISD varsity tournaments would cause long-term harm because it would be hard to get those teams back. So at this point, we would decrease our staff uniform allotment from $140 a coach to $70 a coach. We would reduce the average professional development allotment from $175 a coach to $85 a coach. By canceling sub-varsity tournaments in LCISD, we'll see some cost savings, but that does mean our sub-varsity teams will travel to tournaments. And we will reduce our district meal allotment. Currently, when teams travel outside of LCISD, they're allotted a certain number of meals per year. It averages around 5 across the board for all sports. This would cut it by 2 meals for all sports in order to generate the needed revenue. Coaches did not feel sport equipment budget should be cut because they needed that money to maintain equipment for that number of participants as well as the current safest equipment they could. They felt the athletic maintenance budget was needed for repairs. And they felt that the capital budget items, and by that I'm talking about things that exceed $5,000, such as wrestling mats, high jump pits. We are currently on a rotation with those, and their fear was if we cut that, that would get us off the rotation and set campuses back. And as I mentioned, they were concerned about interrupting LCISD varsity tournaments and the fact that we may not get teams back to play those down the line. Finally, we talked about reducing program offerings and staff positions. The recommendations were that we turn junior high tennis into a pay-to-play system similar to what we do with our middle school and junior high swimming. It would allow students who are interested in possibly pursuing tennis to have that experience, but it would be at no budget cost to us. We will restrict the JV golf team size and expenses. Currently, we are not running freshman boys track at the 5A level, but our budget still reflects that we have those kids involved. We would actually reduce the boys' budget to equal the girls' budget because both would field 2 teams, JV and varsity. We would cut the freshman tennis team, leaving only JV and varsity at the high schools. We would cut sophomore basketball at the 5A level, leaving 9th grade A, 9th grade B, JV, and varsity. That move was supported by our basketball coaches. We would reduce the football coaching staff by 1 coach, and we will restrict sophomore baseball team expenses at the 5A level. The committees did not want to cut the newly created junior high soccer program. Switching junior high tennis to pay to play makes it budget neutral to us, but still allows that opportunity for students that are interested. Restricting golf and baseball will still afford those students the opportunity to participate in the sport with some measures in place to limit the cost to LCISD. Cutting 9th grade boys track just rectifies the budget situation. That won't cost any of our 5A freshmen the opportunity to compete. Cutting sophomore boys basketball, as I said, was favored by our basketball coaches, and reducing the football staff size by 1 assistant coach reduces stipend amounts at each campus, but it does not cost our students an experience. I would like to say I thought it was very admirable by our coaches that the things they prioritized were the things that would keep athletic opportunities intact for the kids, and that was universal as we talked with our committees. They felt that due to the large participation numbers we're seeing in this, our pilot year of junior high soccer, it was not prudent to cut that program altogether. These are the budget impact numbers. You can see the increased revenue totals, the proposed budget cuts, the program adjustments, and what those total. By working with Jill Ludwig's office, we've also found $125,000 available in the concession fund that can be applied towards the turf. That money was generated at athletic events, which gets us within about $180 of the needed money in order to replace the turf. The timeline would be with the approved 23-24 budget, funds for turf would become available next September. However, updated athletic budget plans need to be rolled out now so that coaches can begin planning and preparing for that. We would ask for updated turf proposals in September of 23, and then turf installation would begin in December. We will have to review the budget again about this time next year in order to assess what maintenance needs we still have and what we'll need to do, what we can reinstate and what we can't. Questions?
This is a very painful process.
Yes, sir.
And I thank you and the committee for the work that you did in trying to find the best solution for our students and our staff. Any questions?
But this still doesn't address the lights.
No, ma'am. The only thing this addresses is new turf. We still have 5 light poles that need to be replaced, as well as possibly repairs at the Terry Pool and any other maintenance that comes up between now and then.
So even with the turf being put in, it could possibly that we have to keep some of these budget cuts going for a little while longer unless we find the money somewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do commend you. It looks like you're nickeling and diming it to find $500,000.
Thank you. These were not decisions anyone involved with the committee wanted to make. They were just a position we were put in that we had to make
I
these
know.
tough decisions.
And I appreciate the people that were on this committee.
Is the only sport that we're making pay-to-play junior high tennis?
Currently, junior high swimming is as well. We have a middle school junior high swim program that is pay to play. Part of the reason for that is that with the UIL rules, our high school coaches can work with our individual sport athletes. They cannot work with team sports. So we looked into, could we do this for junior high soccer as well? But we don't have the same flexibility within the rules to structure it that way.
For junior high swimming, since we're already doing that, is there a system where if there's a socioeconomically disadvantaged student that can't pay that they could still participate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that would be the same for tennis?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now,
Mr. Welch?
Prop D on the bond was how much again?
I believe it was closer to 1.5 million.
And so the lights, if I understand that right, we were going to do maintenance on the stadium with that proposition money. that we cannot do because the bond didn't pass. So we are going to replace the turf with these budget cuts, and the rest of that money was going to be used for the lighting at the stadium, or what else was involved in the rest of that prop?
Let me clarify that, because the number you gave, Coach, was for turf only.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Welch, were you asking for the total budget?
Yeah,
for
the total budget, because it was
Prop
put
D?
to the public of,
Right.
of
Prop D
maintenance
was
for
roughly about $5 million.
$5 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so help us understand what the full $5 million would have been used for had it passed the public.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Buchanan.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Nivens. What we had in that proposal was not only the turf, but some drainage issues that we have as well. It also fixed the electrical, which was quite expensive because initially we're talking about now just looking at the lights going from incandescent to LEDs, but we were talking about rerunning the wiring because we have some wiring issues with inside the poles, along with some bleacher issues that we're also incurring at the stadium as well. So it was repairing all those issues that we were having at the current stadium.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the work and to the committees. I know that's not easy. We understand. So for the tickets information, the first half of the presentation, that is still all going to take place. Like the non-home games at trailer, et cetera, correct?
Yes, our current ticketing system will stay in place. For those home games being played at the campus, we will still utilize our online ticketing provider, and they will go on sale on Monday morning. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't ask that well. The limited number of tickets, even with the budget cuts, that's a completely separate thing, right?
Yes, that has to do with the capacity at the campus facilities.
Right, okay. So my question to that presentation, I guess after hearing everything too, is, so I was at a soccer game at George Ranch the other night, and there are some concerns about having that many people, and like, I don't know all the campus setups, but for example, there's an open field behind George Ranch, right, where people can come in, like how, I was a huge proponent of second stadium and the turf, so I'm obviously very disappointed, but here we are. Like you said, I'm thankful that y'all are working out something at least to get the turf replaced. What are the thoughts about that? I guess is that just gonna look different, like security-wise and managing everybody all packed in those little bleachers and that type of stuff?
Yes, ma'am, and that'll be kind of the next phase of this, is I'll work with our police department and our security department to talk about what the actual logistics of those campus games are going to include.
Okay. I think also, as we know, messaging is important and communication is with every single change that we do, if we can make sure people understand why we are doing it, because I don't want it to be here's some new changes that are coming down because of some other decisions that have been made. It has nothing to do with any recent decisions we've made. It's everything to do with that people did not vote for these pieces in the bond. And so we made it a priority on the bond. It didn't pass, so that was a decision from the community. And so these are the results. And so I just would like to make sure that in everything we do, tickets are limited because the bond, you know what I mean? I just think it's gonna be, because I can already see a lot of questions. They don't care about this, they don't care about that, but we do care, but this is the position we're in. And so if y'all can, I would just advocate for making sure that's very clear with all the changes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to commend Coach Nelson and the staff and all the coaches. A lot of people, coaches are kind of overlooked a lot. And, I coached for quite a while. And not only are they in the classroom, but they also do a lot of stuff outside of the classroom. And so all of our coaches have duty at 6 a.m. and don't get home till midnight because of practices and games and film study and washing clothes and taking kids home. And in my case, buying chicken on the way home and feeding kids before you get them there. And so I just want to say, I appreciate our coaches because they're the unsung heroes. Coaches are the master motivators. They can get a kid to run through a brick wall and believe they can. And so coaches are the master motivators, and I appreciate the efforts And just listening to it again, I've been hearing this, it pierces my soul because I know how important extracurricular activities are to our kids. A lot of kids need that so they can come to school and be connected, and they do well in class. And I've been on campuses and I've watched our head coaches and our athletic directors, our campus athletic coordinators, talk to students and speak life into them and mentor them. And every time I'm at Lamar High School, I see coach in the hall and talking to kids, and I mean, it's just, so I just want to say that because I don't want that to fall on deaf ears that our coaches do a lot. They do a lot.
Yes, sir.
They do an awful lot. That's the easiest way I can say it. They do an awful lot. And so hopefully this is a short-term plan. But if not, coaches, I just want you to hear that we see you and we know everything that you do. At least I do. I definitely do. And this board does also. So we appreciate you guys and ladies.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will open up the floor to any members of the public that have any comments on anything that is on this agenda. All right. Then it is 5:31. We're adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082, the Open Meetings Act, to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney.
You good?
We're now back in open session. It is 6:00 p.m. We have a quorum. Are there any motions to be made?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the action on land as discussed in closed session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Danziger seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Very good. The meeting is adjourned. It is 6:01 p.m.